to the STLK in the UTA Cougars podcast. I'm Paul, joined by Steve. Steve, I wasn't here last week, but from what I heard, you guys were hopeful going into this Iowa State game. You and Conjo were.
We had some hope. I think FPI was giving us like a 1-3 chance of the game. I felt a little bit better about it than that. We were looking back to when BYU was blown out at TCU. They came back and beat a good Texas Tech team at home, thinking we go get blown out of Virginia, come home, get the crowd involved, and have a good chance. But man, it didn't turn out, did it?
No, I'm glad I wasn't here. I obviously was sick, so I couldn't make it.
We missed your mojo.
1-3. I felt way worse than that. You could have told me 1-5, and I'm like, wow, they think that good, huh? It wasn't a pretty game. From the start, it was over, I think, with 8 minutes left in the first quarter. Not a good game.
We've been talking about it all year. BYU's got to get off to a quick start, keep the crowd in the game, get everybody excited. It just hasn't happened. I can't think of a game where we had a good start this year. And, I mean, they kick the ball off. We fumble the return. Luckily, we jump on it. First play, Jake Retzlaff rolls off to his right. There's two levels there. Isaac Rex is about 6 yards. He throws the deeper pass. Doesn't see the linebacker cutting underneath. He throws that ball to Rex. Rex makes one move. We have a first down on the first play of the game. We're feeling good about ourselves. And fortunately, they throw a pick, right? Then obviously, we have the fumble on the next drive, and we're down 10-0 3 minutes into the game.
It's so hard to come back from that. And not only has BYU not learned how to start fast this year, we haven't learned how to stop the other team from starting incredibly fast. Like, I feel like all of these teams were playing their best first quarters are against us. It's so frustrating.
We make a lot of other teams look good. It's felt like that this year. We made a lot of other quarterbacks look good, whether they're backups, third strings, freshmen, true freshmen. We made a lot of opposing teams look good. And it's frustrating because at the beginning of the year, all the way up until the Texas game, we were feeling pretty good about this defense, right? They had played well enough to keep BYU in games. The offense had been sputtering all year long, but the defense played good enough to keep us in games. But man, the last couple of weeks, Jay Hill's defense has not been great.
No, I don't know the exact number, but we're giving up a lot of points per game. And to your point about the other teams looking incredible when they play us, West Virginia looked like a top 10 team last week against us. They go play Oklahoma, and they look like an FCS school. Not feeling good going into this weekend either.
Yeah, obviously Oklahoma's a great team, and they've had their ups and downs as well, though.
Yeah.
I mean, they went and lost in Bedlam to Oklahoma State, one of their rivals. And Oklahoma State looks great. Then Oklahoma State this week goes to UCF, a team that has not played well this year and just gets absolutely smoked.
Wasn't even close
by UCF.
What was it, 45-3?
Yeah, something like that. And so you're like, well, maybe BYU does have a chance in Stillwater. And so the Big 12 has been very volatile. There's been a lot of blowouts that are odd. There's been games that you think a team's going to go in and win, and they don't. Whether it's home, away. Anyway, it's been all over the place, but maybe the constant has been BYU's been disappointing of late.
Yeah, I feel like we haven't been on the other side of a crazy win. Like, oh my gosh, how did they win by 30?
I will say, though, looking back to that Texas Tech team, Texas Tech has won some games, and it was 24-0, 24-3 at halftime. And so, like, that, to me, that's like the bright spot of our season because Texas Tech is no slouch. Granted, we had their backup quarterback and their starters back now, but they had their, one of the best running backs in the country, and we seemed to shut them down. So that was a bright spot. If maybe we can have a half like we had against Texas Tech, we have some sort of shot this weekend. Maybe.
I'm not sure. I'm going to throw this question at you, and I'm glad I didn't bring it up before we started recording. Was Slovis the problem? Do you think this shows that Slovis was or wasn't the problem?
Slovis was. I don't think he was ever the problem. He just wasn't helping us win games.
Yeah.
And I think you get to the point in the season where he plays 8 games and it's like, okay, this guy, he's not making the plays that would really move the needle for this BYU offense. So you look to the future and you say it's his last year playing. He's not going to be back next year. And now we have this guy in the wings that was the best quarterback at the JUCO level last year, who's going to have this year plus 2 more, and you're like, all right, let's get him in the game. And man, I gave him, you asked me for a grade on Jake Retzlaff after the West Virginia game. I gave him a B. I caught some flack for that. I had some buddies text me saying he wasn't that good, but I thought when you looked at the whole context of the game, missing a couple of the receivers, the offensive line played horrible, the run game wasn't there. I thought he played a good game, but man, this last weekend, he did not look good. I think he was 10 for 27. And at halftime, we had 6 yards passing. At halftime, he had 2 completions. One of them was behind the line on a screen to Chase. And 6 yards passing at halftime. And so Retzlaff did not look great this weekend.
37 QBR for Jake Retzlaff this last weekend. The only reason I ask, I see on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it all the time, they're like, oh, well, Slovis got hurt or benched or whatever you want to call it. Like, obviously, this is going to show us that Slovis was the problem and not the offense. It's starting to look like it's far deeper than just a quarterback concern at this point. And I'm not sure where the biggest issue is. It feels like there's issues all over the field.
Well, and it seems like from week to week, we have some bright spots. So the West Virginia game, the bright spot in my mind was the quarterback. This week, I thought the offensive line played well enough, right? We had 188 yards rushing. Like, that's a shocking number. Like,
it's a lot.
You watch that game and you don't come out thinking we were close to 200 yards rushing. We averaged 4.9 yards a carry. Jake was the leading rusher on the team with 17 carries. Some of those are sacks included. If you take out Jake's contributions in the running game, we averaged over 6 yards a carry. Like, that's a great number, especially looking at the context of the season for our team. But it seems like every week it's just like we improve in one. It's like the one step forward and two steps back, right? We've improved in one area. The offensive line finally puts together a nice game, and the defense doesn't show up. Or, we finally have some sort of break and we throw an interception, or our guys are slipping all over the field, or whatever it may be. We just have not put together a full game yet.
Well, let's look forward to this weekend. 10 a.m. in Provo, Utah. They're hosting the number 17 ranked Oklahoma Sooners. Is there any chance we come away with bowl eligibility after this game?
I think FPI is less than 5% at this point, which I think is fair. I tweeted out this weekend, right after the Iowa State game, I tweeted out, could the line be Oklahoma favored by 24?
And
the line
what?
came out, and I need a job in Vegas is basically what it
24.
Yeah, so BYU is 24-point dogs at home, which is just massively disrespectful. But you can't blame the lines givers, right? I mean, If I had to put money on somebody at this point, I would put money on Oklahoma.
Absolutely.
I have little to no confidence that BYU is going to come out and put on a show. It is senior day. We have a lot of guys that are either seniors or that were here through the COVID year, so who have their degree, right? Guys like Connor Pay are saying he may not have another game at Lavelle. We have guys like Isaac Rex, who broke the record Saturday night, saying he's done after this season. We have the defensive end, Tyler Batty, right? He could come back for another year. He says he's probably done at BYU as well. And so we have a number of players that are going to be playing their last game at Lavelle Edwards Stadium. I'm sure they want to finish off their career here on a bright spot, but playing a team that's as capable as Oklahoma, it's going to be a tough battle.
It's going to be fun. It's an ESPN game. Like I said, it's 10 a.m. BYU rarely plays in the afternoon, let alone in the morning.
Haven't played at 10 a.m. since 2004.
Okay, so
it's
when I say rarely, I was 5 years old. That makes sense.
We talk about BYU playing at night, playing better at night. It might be like dark enough in the morning that we can get some of that vampire spirit out.
Daylight savings, I'm not even sure if the sun's going to be out at 10 a.m., but I'm excited to see, right? Like, there's a chance.
Unfortunately, it does look like it's going to be wet, which is going to suck.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people that paid a lot of money for tickets to this Oklahoma game. Obviously, the ticket prices have fallen off a cliff this week. But there's a lot of people that paid a lot of money to beat this game. So I imagine there's going to be a good turnout just because by virtue of the opponent, right? A few years back, we played USC at home. What was like 2017, 2018, something like that.
Yeah.
It's actually Keaton Slovis's freshman year, I believe. We ended up winning the game. I think it was overtime and like a tip pass interception, something. But I just remember before the game, oftentimes before the game, my seats are a little higher. And so I just go like stand close to the field and like watch warm-ups for a few minutes, And just seeing USC's helmet on the field in Provo, Utah was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like, that is a blue blood, like, top program in the country. And here they are on our field in Provo. And I feel like me and many other BYU fans are going to have a similar feeling this week. Like, Oklahoma, the team with 6 most wins all time in college football history, is going to be on our field. It's going to be kind of a cool experience.
I can't imagine it not being a sellout crowd. And you said the tickets dropped. I assure everyone they will sell out before Saturday morning. I haven't even looked at ticket prices, and I'm like, absolutely. Like, I should be there. So, like you said, it's Oklahoma. Like, you just don't miss this game. 5.8% chance to win is what ESPN's saying.
Yeah, 24-point dog. Sounds about right.
Yep.
You just never know when a team like Oklahoma will ever come to Provo again. Right? They're going to the SEC. SEC teams never play on the road.
No.
And they never play west of the Mississippi if they are on the road. And so, you just never know when a caliber team like that is going to be in Provo. It's pretty cool that BYU caught Texas and Oklahoma this year. Obviously, we're expecting those to be 2 losses, but if we were going to play those teams, it's cool that we got them before they took off to the SEC.
It's so hard. So Oklahoma's first loss of the year, I believe, came to Kansas, who BYU didn't play terrible against. So if you just look at those two things, you're like, yeah, sure, BYU could hang in there this weekend. It also, kind of is indicative of how next week is going to go as well, because Oklahoma lost to Oklahoma State. It makes me nervous. If we lose this game and it's pretty bad, do you think we're done for the season? Like, we're not beating Oklahoma State? Or do you think the Big 12 has been so volatile that we could lose this game by 30 and go in next week and beat Oklahoma State by 20?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Big 12 slate, like Oklahoma went and beat Texas, right? And then they come back and lose to Kansas, and then they come back and lose to Oklahoma State. And Oklahoma State, we've talked about a number of times, lost at home to, I believe, a Conference USA team to open the season. But then they go beat Oklahoma, and now they just lay an egg at UCF. And so it's just the back and forth. And I mean, I don't think that BYU goes to Stillwater and beats Oklahoma State, but who knows? Maybe they have a week of practice like they did this week against UCF, and BYU goes in there and has a chance. I imagine, like usual on the road, BYU fans are going to turn out. Like I've talked about, I'm going to try to be at that game. I know a couple buddies that are going to the game, so we'll see what happens. I have little confidence that they're going to go in and win a game and become bowl eligible. I believe FPI right now is giving BYU still a 23% chance of making a bowl. There are going to be some 5 and 7 teams that make a bowl just because of how everything's shaken out. But man, at this point, I just can't imagine that BYU makes a bowl.
You said man, I hate hearing that. That gave me a pit in my stomach as you said it. You said it's going to be wet on Saturday. We have the cleats hung up.
I brought some cleats here. These are game-worn cleats.
Okay.
Devon Blackman, if you remember him, number 19, D Black. He actually signed the cleats. You can see here on the sides, he signed them. I want to talk about cleats. I worked for the equipment staff on the team, and there's a lot said about the cleats on Saturday. I am in complete agreement that BYU's equipment staff has to do a better job with the cleats. Now, let me kind of paint a picture of how this works. So BYU knows that going into this game, they're wearing the black uniforms, right? And so all the guys now want to wear black cleats to match the black uniforms. Most of the weeks, they're wearing white cleats. So these are new cleats for the week. Now, throughout a football season, most players are going through 3, 4, 5 pairs of cleats. So every few weeks, they'll come to the equipment staff, show them their old cleats, plead their case like, hey, I need new cleats, right. Some of them more often than others, but they want new cleats to look cool, look swaggy, whatever for the game. So this week, BYU is going black uniforms. They're going to have black cleats. So all the players Monday morning coming into the building are going to have new cleats, right? Most players have one. Some of them have 2 styles of cleats that they like. And not every style comes in every color. So some guys are going to have to wear a little bit different style to wear black cleats. So what typically happens is they'll wear them to practice on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. A lot of guys will also bring them into the equipment staff and they put them on those stretchers. So there's like this little device you kind of squeeze in the shoe that stretches the shoe so it's not so tight on the foot and it fits a little bit better. But that's happening all throughout the week. And then on Thursday, after walkthrough, what happens is the guys throw their equipment into just like a big, huge duffel bag. And each player that's dressing at the game is going to give the equipment staff a duffel bag of all of their stuff. Whether it's wristbands or shooter sleeves or tights or cleats or their helmet, right? All of that goes into one bag. And so what I really see happening here is the equipment staff did a poor job of preparing the players with the type of cleats they would need for a wet field. And it used to be back in the day, like a lot of cleats were like replaceable. You'd unscrew them and you'd take out the 1/2 inch cleat and put in the 3/4 inch cleat, right? And maybe some fans thought, why don't they just unscrew the cleats and put in longer cleats so they can take grip? Most of the Nike cleats nowadays don't have that. As you can see, they're just studs. But in my mind, the equipment staff should have done a better job predicting that the field was going to be wet, it was going to be cold, and the players would need longer cleats, and that just didn't happen. And maybe it's because it was a blackout. If we had the white cleats, maybe they have more options available, but that's kind of a breakdown for how it works. And so to say hey, at halftime, everybody needs to be changing cleats, well, unless the player put an extra pair of cleats in their bag that showed up at the stadium, the cleats wouldn't be there.
Right.
Now, could some staffer on the team run back to the SAB and grab a bunch of cleats that have longer studs? Yes. But the players are going to be having foot cramps, right? They haven't worn them all week. They haven't been stretched. And so anyway, there's some insight into how it works with the cleats. All that said, BYU better have better grip. This Saturday, we should be expecting the wet, right? The weather's already there. Yeah. And the equipment staff should be prepared to help the guys out.
I think that was really good insight, by the way. I had no idea. I love that kind of deep dive into stuff. It's kind of shocking. And maybe the players didn't really notice it was going to be wet. Maybe that's not their job. But to opt for cleats that you really haven't worn all year to look good, rather than just wear the cleats that have been working for you all year, kind of a shocking thing. I mean, again, they looked great, don't get me wrong. But what didn't look great is every single time we were chasing after someone, we slipped.
Yeah, and I saw the videos on X, there's some sniper up there. You see the one play, I think it was a screen, 4 guys are falling down. Yes, that's the
one I was thinking of.
And I don't think it's the reason that we lost the game, but man, it sure played a factor.
Oh, it helps to be on your feet, right?
I'm thinking of a 3rd down in the second quarter when the game's not over yet. I think it was 17-7 at that point, right? The game's not over, and it's a 3rd down, and Jake Retzlaff goes to step up in the pocket, and he slips, right? Yeah. And he falls, and that's a sack. Whereas if he doesn't slip, he probably converts that 1st down. So... Was it the reason we lost? No. Did it play a factor? Absolutely it did.
Yeah. It hurts just to see those little miscues, especially at home. That's the other big thing. It's we didn't travel and just not have enough supplies with us. We were in our hometown. This should be advantage us. Instead, we saw Iowa State just look like they've been playing on our field for 20 years. Is it too early to talk hoops? Let's talk basketball.
We got to talk basketball, but we got to get to the slate.
Yes.
We got to get to Steve Slate.
I wasn't here for that, so I apologize skipping on it. Let me pull it up.
We did 5 over-unders last week. Steve Slate, Conjo was stepping in for you. You weren't here. Did a couple stats for the team and then a couple fun ones as well.
Yeah, I have them. Are you ready?
Let's go.
So the first, I'm going to list them all 5.
Got to be accountable.
And then we can say how you did. So the first one was the game will be over before 11:40 p.m. That was a fun one. I like that. Retzlaff under 1.5 passing touchdowns. Cosmo over 6 foot stunt. That's a good line. Chase over 4.5 catches, and team rushing yards over 90 yards. First one.
Start at the top. I predict the game would end before 11:40, and it did indeed. It ended at 11:33, so it's pretty tight.
It was a really tight window, but you got it. Next one. Retzlaff under 1.5 passing touchdowns. I checked that out before we started recording, and I said, man, who made that line? That was awfully high. And you're like, oh, I did. I felt bad for making fun of you. But that one absolutely cashed. Retzlaff went under.
He did go under, but it was one of the second drive of the game where BYU marched the field and scored to make it 10-7, and he threw a touchdown. I thought could be a 4-touchdown game, and I was excited, but he never got another one. We did have a second passing touchdown, but it was one of the receivers, number 82, Parker Kingston.
Yes, he was 1 for 1.
Threw that left-handed pass, so he was under 1.5 touchdowns.
Parker actually had a QBR of 100 this last game, so that was pretty exciting. Maybe he's going to be our backup to our backup. The Cosmo over 6 foot stunt. I wasn't there in person. I believe you were. Did we cash on that?
So Cosmo usually does like things in the air, whether it's jumping through like a flaming ring or something high in the air. He did like this weird dance.
Okay.
He was wearing a suit.
Oh, I did see this.
And I think Cosmo looks better shirtless than he does in a suit, but he just did like this dance. It was kind of like a show tunes dance with an umbrella.
Yeah.
Anyway, very weird. I predicted over 6 feet and he was far under.
Okay.
Disappointing.
So we are 2 for 3 right now. Chase over 4.5 catches. How did we do?
I'd have to check that one. I don't remember. I think he was under. I believe he only had 2 or 3 catches. 2 catches, 12 yards. Yep. So I think that's a great indicator that BYU was not successful when one of the better players on the offense only got 2 touches the entire game. One of them was a loss, I believe. I think the screenplay was a loss.
Well, leads us to our last one. The over 90 yards. You cashed that one by 100 plus. That was incredible.
Yeah, like we talked about, shocked to see that we rushed for 188 yards. That's great to see. I think the offensive line finally had a good game. But overall, I believe 3-2 on Steve Slate.
Steve Slate's really good. Yeah, it's better than Conjo's card. For those who are listening that haven't heard, Conjo does a Utah Jazz card every game day. He's not very good at it. So if you're watching this, go to Instagram, go to X, make fun of him. He hates hearing about it. But let's talk hoops if you're ready for it.
Basketball. We got ourselves a basketball team.
A team that I thought was overrated going into the season, and they come into Provo and just dominate San Diego State. That was incredible.
They played great. We went down early 7-0, all out of the football team we've been talking about.
Yep.
I think we missed 2 like open layups and then an open 3. But from that point, we started to look really good. We were up basically the entire game, ended up closing it out. It was a great environment. The Marriott Center was completely sold out. The Rock was massive. I think we rattled their guys a little bit, and man, it was a fun night to be there.
So I was there at the game, and I actually had pretty good seats where I could see. I love being at basketball games way more than I love being at a football game, because I'm not a casual football fan, but I played basketball long enough to know what to look for if I'm there in person. And to your point, this San Diego State team, middle of the second half, they fell apart. Like on the bench, they started going at each other. The coaches started bickering for some reason. I'm like, if you're a BYU fan, this is perfect. Like, it could not have gone better for them.
And that's a team that was in the national championship game last year.
Yeah.
Obviously, they've had some turnover, but that's a highly successful team that gets a lot of really good athletes, big recruits. Right? There's a huge amount of high school athletes in Southern California that don't make it to USC and UCLA because of academic standards or a number of other reasons that end up at San Diego State. And I think this is a team full of athletes that are indicative of the type of teams BYU will play in the Big 12. Big, strong interior guys, super athletic guys on the wing, really solid point guards that can distribute the basketball. So for BYU to look that good against a team that's highly rated, a team that's that athletic and big, I think is a huge plus for us.
Yeah, and some of their best players did return. Like you said, there was some turnover, but there wasn't enough where it's like, oh, they won't be nearly as good as they were. They're 17th in the country. That's really, really good. Dallin Hall, I thought the first half plus the first 10 minutes of the second half didn't play great. And I think if you ask him, he would agree. He had, at that point, I think 4 turnovers in those 30 minutes of gameplay, and I'm not sure how many minutes he played actually. But he also had a handful of passes that could have been stolen that were just tipped. You're like, oh man, that was lucky. He ended up saving us at the end of the game. He had a few step back threes, a few passes. This kid's legit.
He turned it on when BYU needed him. The first half was really the Jacob Robinson show. I believe he had 12 points in the first half. Just couldn't miss those fadeaways. He kind of has that interesting, like, over and up shot. But man, he played really well. Then the end of the game, Dallin Hall really closed it out. 16 of his 18 points came after halftime. And you're right, the little point guard for, I believe he's number 17 for San Diego State, maybe something else, but he was really giving Dallin Hall a hard time. Like you said, like a couple turnovers. He just looked frustrated. Dallin Hall was, dribbling really hard and looking at the refs trying to get a call and couldn't get there. But man, he sure closed the game well. He was led BYU in plus minus at plus 17. Richie Saunders plus 15. So a couple great players there for the game.
Richie Saunders. I want to talk about him for a minute. I'm not. Did you watch the entire game?
Yeah, I was there.
Okay, you were there. Okay. There's not a lot that he did that showed up on the stat sheet. Every single time there was action on the floor, Richie Saunders was there. Like whether he was tipping the ball, someone gets fouled, Richie's in their face, like as they're standing up. Just the small things that frustrate you so much as an opponent. I would hate to play against Richie.
And he's got like the headband this year, the white headband.
I love it.
On. He's like Cobra Kai or whatever. Looks like he should be in a karate show. He's like the ultimate glue guy. He's the guy you want on your team. He's not starting the game, but he got a good chunk of minutes on Friday night. And you're right. He's always in there. He's scrappy. BYU's talked about, Coach Pope has talked out this year, gang rebounding, like getting 5 guys in the paint to rebound. And I think Richie's really the one that sets the tone for that physicality and that hustle. And man, he's all over the place. It's fun to watch.
Richie, and then Trey Stewart. Kind of worried me. Again, it's against a really big opponent. He started at the point guard spot. Dallin Hall didn't. Trey had 0 assists, 3 turnovers. Is that even something to be concerned about yet, you think?
Well, they say Dallin Hall was injured coming into the year, like through camp in the summer, and that's why Trey is starting.
Like a minutes restriction type thing?
Trey looked good a week or so ago in the opening game against Houston Christian. He did not look good or comfortable. He never really got into a groove.
Only 15 minutes.
He did start the first and second halves, but I don't recall him coming in after that. Dallin Hall, I think, played the remainder of the time, and so I don't imagine Dallin Hall's coming off the bench anymore this season. He played really, really well. So
yeah, excuse me. Trey Stewart started the second half. I think he left with 16 minutes left in the second half and did not come in the rest of the game. Which again, if you're the starting point guard for a team that I believe is unofficially the 32nd best team in the AP poll, they received enough votes to be 32nd. It's kind of worrisome if you're not star, but your starting point guard's doing that. Again, I think Trey's a fantastic player. I think he's going to turn it around, but that did worry me a little bit. Not only with the stats, but he just didn't look super comfortable out there.
Well, and with some injuries, especially to big guys this summer. I know Khalifa was injured. Waterman wasn't 100% over the summer. And so there's a lot of these guys that haven't had a ton of time playing together. And so we should see this team continue to improve as the year goes on, as they get more comfortable with each other. And BYU's still playing 10, 11, 12 players in these games. You got to imagine Mark Pope whittles that down to 8 or 9 guys in his core rotation as he kind of figure out who can play where. But, man, I'm excited. I'm trying not to get my expectations up. BYU went and beat Arkansas, an SEC team this year, and we were getting excited. So I'm not trying not to get too hot, but it was fun to watch the basketball team.
Yeah, I'm notorious for getting my hopes up with this basketball team. Every single year, I'm like, we're not going to be good, guys. Like anyone that asks me, I'm like, don't worry about it. We're not going to be good. And then we have a big win like this. And then every year, I'm like, if I'm you guys, I'm getting the Final Four tattoo now. And don't worry about what happens down the road. It's for sure happening. SE Louisiana this weekend, on Wednesday. I've never heard of them. Then Morgan State, I've heard of them, but again, not really basketball school. We finish out next Thursday with Arizona State down in Vegas. We kind of have a breeze until then. We play 2 teams that aren't really known. We almost have 2 full weeks of practice without real opponents.
And BYU could finish their kind of pre-conference slate with 1, 2, 3 losses, right? They could be like a 10-3 or like an 11-2 type team. We do go to Salt Lake to play Utah, who is actually a decent team this year. Their fans still don't show up from, but they're a good team. I think they're Ken Pom Tom 50. Ken Pom has BYU at 29 right now. That should be a really fun game. So yeah, we have some time to practice. We get to play some of these lower level teams to really figure things out, and then should be a fun Thanksgiving tournament in Vegas.
Yeah, going down to Arizona State, I really, really hope we have the lineup figured out, or as at least the 8 or 9 rotation guys, because I feel like that's a really important part of a good team, is just knowing your role and knowing who's going to play. After Arizona State, like you said, we play Utah beginning of December, but after that we don't play another good team until Wyoming, and then all of a sudden it's January
and it's Big 12
and it's Big 12. And let me tell you, I have never been excited for Big 12 basketball like I am this year. This is going to be fun.
We talked about it last week. Conjo and I talked about it when you weren't here. Some of these teams that are coming to Provo, some of the venues that BYU gets to play in, Allen Fieldhouse, like against the number 1 team in the country. We're going to have big times teams like Texas and Houston, top 10 teams in Provo. And who knows, the Marriott Center gets rocking. BYU starts to hit a couple threes. They get gang rebounding. And I think we're going to clip a couple teams this year. The Big 12 coaches chose BYU as the bottom of the conference, which I think is totally fair. But I think we're going to surprise some people. We may not have a great overall Big 12 record, but I think we are going to win some games that will surprise Big 12 fans.
Yeah, I think playing in the Marriott Center is going to be a lot harder than a lot of people think. Like, we just watched San Diego State, who you said went to the national championship. They played under pressure, and they looked rattled in Provo. Baylor, Kansas State, Kansas, all these teams are coming to Provo. It's not like football where you either are home or away. It's home and away. So we're catching all these teams at least twice. I think BYU is going to be better than we've all predicted, at least.
Basketball should be a fun season. It should be good.
Yeah.
Let me get my mascot minute in.
Yeah, please.
We didn't talk about the Oklahoma Sooners. You know where Sooners comes from? Have you heard this?
I haven't.
Back in the late 1800s, 1899, they decided they're going to open up Oklahoma. Anybody who goes and incorporates the land, lives on the land, that becomes yours. It was just free land.
Great.
But there was like this interesting like run for it. And so supposedly the story goes that there was like a kind of a start line, and then somebody had a gun, and you weren't allowed to run out and claim your land until they shot the gun, right? There were some people that cheated. I don't know if they went behind trees or like they're swimming in the lakes, how they got out there. But some of the people left before the gunshot. They left too soon, and they became known as Sooners. So boomer was a slang term for a pioneer. Sooner were people that left too early and were kind of cheating. So that's where boomer, Sooner comes from. Their official mascot is actually the Sooner Schooner. I don't know how many teams' official mascot is like a transportation vehicle. Theirs is. It's that covered wagon.
Yep.
It's towed by two white ponies, Boomer and Sooner. They also have like mascots that dress up, also called Boomer and Sooner. So interesting. They were introduced. These mascots were introduced back in the '60s. One of the most iconic home field runouts. Right. We've been talking a lot about those. Whether it's Bevo, whether it's we got Uga, the live mascots. We're not playing in Norman, but if we were, they would run out the Boomer Schooner.
I wish they would in Provo.
That'd be kind of cool. We just
cool.
welcome them in with our schooner.
Yeah, like we don't have our Cougar out anyway. Like no one's gonna hurt him. Like just let him run.
Anyway, 6 most wins all time, 7 national titles, 50 conference titles, 7 Heisman Trophy winners, including 2 in the last 5 years. And so a very storied program. Should be fun to see them in Provo.
That whole idea where you just run to land and it's yours. I would love to see that in Utah County somewhere. I would love to see it.
There's
I think
a lot of
it'd get
empty land in our state.
Yeah,
that could be fun.
Go down to Nephi, just see who's the fastest. Let's do this. That's been it. That's the STLK and the UTA Cougars podcast. I'm Paul. This is Steve. We're only doing one this week. Is that correct?
Just one podcast this week.
We'll be back on this feed on next Tuesday with more Cougar stuff.